So it's now the time for me to pick up where I left off on what would have been Sunday in this series of videos I do every year. I decided to pick it up today because 3 days in a row doing this series of videos really is a lot, not just to do, but most definitely to take in for some of you, especially if you're hearing this story for the first time. And B, a little time apart, would definitely be a good idea, especially when you do something like that for enough days, you're going to wind up missing a lot. That's why Monday was doing nothing but playing catch up. And C, option C, number 3. It was on this day 12 years ago, the unthinkable happened. So I guess there's no better way to start than the beginning. Naturally, since I no longer contemplated suicide, I was very much in a state of going through the motions of life. I mean, I obviously did eventually graduate from Trinity-Pawling I, and I got accepted to Gettysburg College. And I can tell you that in terms of behavior and how I acted in school, I really was a model student. In terms of my grades, I was not a very good student. And I want to make one thing clear. I always went to all my classes. I always got all my work done. I never experimented with drugs. I never partied too much with alcohol. To this day, I still have my V card. The reason why I say I wasn't a good student was because my entire life, I never have ever cared for reading. I mean, I appreciate it more now, but you're never really going to see me read a book unless it's for something important or maybe once in a while. I'm just not much of a reader. And because I'm not much of a reader, that also means I'm not really much of a studier either. See, I'm the kind of person that if I have a commitment to go to, like school, I will go to school, I will go to all my classes, and whatever they tell me to do at school, I will do. Now, if they tell me that I have homework to do, I will do it. But that is all I will do. I'm not going to go back and look at it. I'm not going to, look it over X number of times and say, okay, because of this, I can apply this for like an upcoming test or something. I just really wasn't much of a studier. And my grades usually suffered for it. To this day, I'm still amazed I graduated college, for being honest. I must have gotten like who am I kidding? I'm never going to go back to school ever again. I probably got like 3 D pluses or something. At least 3. Hold on. Yeah. Again, not a very good student. My overall GPA was like 2.34 or something along those lines. Really not very good. In fact, my senior year, I actually had to repeat one of my classes because I really did do that bad in that class. specifically Anatomy and Physiology 1. I was a health science major. More on that in a second. So, fall semester of senior year is over. And I get the news that I'm going to get, I want to say I got like a B minus for Anatomy and Physiology 1. And I'm like celebrating, I'm happy, I'm saying, where are you at? Where are you at? Like I was over the moon when I learned this. It might have been maybe a half hour to an hour later when I heard the most unthinkable news I think I ever would have heard. See, when Andrew Einstein had sadly passed away, and I no longer contemplated suicide because of it, I really did hope and pray that while everyone is destined to go, that it won't happen for a very, very, very long time. And having been, at that time, 4 years and 6 days since that incident, I really thought that was what it was going to be. And sadly it wasn't. Because when I graduated from Trinity-Pawling, 88 of us graduated. Would have been 89 had Andrew Einstein not passed away. On this day 12 years ago, that number went down to 87. Because another one of us died. His name was Sean Bertanza. And like Andrew Einstein before him, he not only was a PG, much like myself, he also ran cross country. And that wasn't even his sport of choice. See, that's actually the interesting thing. There were 3 postgraduates who wound up making the top 7 in cross country. Andrew Einstein, Sean Bertanza, and after fighting tooth and nail that whole season, myself. As of right now, I'm the only one of those 3 that's still alive. And usually every time I say that, I always ask, hey, if you guys have like an invisibility cloak around? Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows joke. So I better say something to liven the tension a little. What's even crazier is Sean was in my English class. I had mentioned before how there were 3 postgraduates, obviously Andrew, Sean, and myself, that did cross country, that made the top 7. And as I said before, cross country wasn't even the sport of choice for us. I mean, I really was a Trinity-Pawling and did cross country before getting into shape for wrestling. Andrew Einstein showed up a couple of days later, which was really kind of annoying because I was barely making the top 7 as it was. And now that's one more person I gotta worry about. As I mentioned before, Andrew Einstein was arguably the fastest runner we had on the team. And now I gotta worry about him. After my first race, establishing that I was number 7 on the team, that's when 2 people arrived. Because if you didn't do sports, you had the option of doing club sports. And 2 students were like, hey, cross country looks fun. They were in running club, wanted to do cross country. And one of those people was Sean Bertanza. And he was the third fastest person on the team from that moment on. Meaning I have to fight extra hard to secure my number 7 spot. So, I mean, it's one thing when people when like someone's already there when the season starts and they're better than you. It's another when, like in this situation, I finally make the top 7, and every time I do, somebody else has to show up and, jeopardize that. So, as you can imagine, doing cross country wound up being a lot more stressful than it really should have been for me. Like Andrew, Sean was arguably, one of the nicest people you would ever meet. I mentioned that all three of us, we did cross country, even though that wasn't our major sport. For me, it was wrestling. For Andrew Einstein, it was lacrosse, as I mentioned on Saturday. Yeah, I mentioned on Saturday. For Sean, he was actually there to play basketball. And I kid you not, I mean, my knowledge of basketball has gotten better over the years. It wasn't until just a couple of years ago I was able to deduce that Sean was, if my terminology is correct, a shooting guard. And if that is the case, the guy is actually in my top 3 shooting guards of all time. At least in terms of basketball players that I personally know, that is. I mean, listen, for the most part, every basketball player I've ever known, was never going to make it into the NBA. Because, do I really need to say it? A bunch of basketball players I know were just relatively above average height white guys. And Sean was, well, it depends on at what point you saw him, because before he shaved his afro, I would tell you that he was about as tall as I was. Yeah, fun fact about Sean, he actually had an afro. A white guy with an afro. Which I do believe is, from what I've heard, it is called a Jewfro. I have no idea if Sean Bertanza was Jewish, but that's apparently what it's called. I don't know. And I'll never forget, this actually happened in English class. This is a true story. We're in English class. And, Sean still has the afro. And I forget what triggered the conversation. But someone had made like a bet with Sean where, and this is why I say he was a shooting guard, because he was really good at shooting 3-point shots. And someone said, if you don't get at least 5 for 9 in your next game, then you have to shave off your afro. Which, to put things into perspective, Sean had that afro the entire time he had been at Trinity-Pawling up to that point, including when he ran cross country. I'm convinced that afro is why he ran so fast. It's afro power. Hey, listen, there are 3 things in life that will always be cool: afros, sunglasses, and bow ties. I'm not a Whovian, but I definitely know what that reference is. So eventually Sean did shave off that afro, and what's funny is, normally when you run into people that you meet, you are able to deduce several things about them, age, race, gender, appearance. To this day, I can still remember Sean both with and without the afro. And as I said before, I really did hope it'd be a long time before any one of us passed away, particularly students who graduated with me. And it was on this day 12 years ago, I heard the news that he had passed. Relatively unexpectedly, I might add. So, I mean, this is how unexpected it was. He wound up dying in his sleep, which, for those out there who are medically savvy, really can mean a number of things. I mean, internal bleeding, maybe his lungs collapsed unexpectedly. For a long time, I actually didn't know. It wasn't until, I want to say 2019, 2020, because I had actually friended his mom on Facebook. This would obviously be many years before I got hacked. And it was his mom that told me that he actually suffered from a condition known as Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'll let you pause the video for a moment so you can look it up what it is. Or you can just let me explain to the best of my ability. Basically, with Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome, well, normally when your heart beats, it's obviously due to an electrical system that's in place. It's an electrical current that, makes your heart go ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. With Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome, that electrical current becomes more irregular, which can lead to several different kinds of problems, including, a fast heart rate, a naturally low heart rate, whatever. So, knowing that he had Wolff-Parkinson's White syndrome and that he died in his sleep, it's easy to piece together that, quite simply, his heart gave out. And knowing that now, I mean, for starters, it's actually amazing he lived to be as long as he did. I mean, he was the same age as me. He would have been 20. He would have just about to turn 23 that next year, because I believe his birthday was in March. I was actually about to turn 23 myself. And since he was a PG like I was, he was in college at the same time I was, he would have had one more semester of college to go before he graduated. For all intents and purposes, Sean had all the life to live and a great future ahead of him, only to be sadly struck down by this. And it was from that moment that, after Andrew Einstein had died, I'd already learned that life was precious. But when Sean died, I learned a very important lesson. Well, several lessons. One of which was to take care and care for the people in your life who know and love you. Because you really do never know when your time is up. So, it's actually one of the reasons why I do these videos every year. Because while I stopped contemplating suicide, and while I get to do these, it's very possible that one day I may no longer be able to. Maybe I'll have a health condition that debilitates me from making videos anymore, or worse, it really could be my time. I mean, right now I'm fine, by the way. To this day, I can say that my life really has been made all the richer because of Trinity-Pawling. Not just from remembering who Andrew Einstein was or Sean Bertanza was, but from meeting all the extraordinary people that I met there and who I've met since graduating. And all because one Saturday afternoon, after Horseheads lost to Fayetteville Manliness 38-3, my senior year, my mom walks up to me and suggests I go to Trinity-Pawling. And I mean, when my mom said Trinity-Pawling was an all-boys school, naturally I was immediately deterred in that moment. I mean, listen, I pretty much alluded to this in my 3 previous videos in this series. No woman at Horseheads was ever going to want me. I was getting rejected by girls left and right at Horseheads. But at least that was a numbers game. If I go to an all-boys school, I don't even have that going for me. And surrounding myself with another year of, teenage angst, it was no wonder why I, really thought I was going to end it there. But I didn't. I get to do this. And because I get to do this, I've also learned, quite a lot. I've learned, to wake up with purpose every day. I've learned to remember the people in your life who love and care. I have learned to cherish the friendships I've made over the last 16 years and 6 days now. And it's actually something I never mentioned the other day in regards to Andrew Einstein passing. While I was at Trinity-Pawling, this was around early to mid-April, so roughly about a month and a half before I would have graduated from Trinity-Pawling. Remember, I was only there for a year. Out of the blue, we were going to get the news that Andrew Einstein's parents were going to come up to Trinity-Pawling. And we were all going to meet in the chapel and hear Andrew's father speak. Which, fun fact about Andrew, when we were having his funeral service, before we went home for winter break at Trinity-Pawling, we had the school chaplain and a rabbi there because Andrew Einstein's mother was Episcopalian and his father was Jewish. I mean, hindsight 2020, Einstein is kind of, I believe it's a Jewish name, that actually reminds me of a really funny anecdote. Back in 2020, one of my old teammates from Horseheads, Dan Manganero, had passed away. He was a freshman, I was a senior at Horseheads. And one of the things that Dan Manganero really was quite a character. And he really would say some pretty funny and sometimes kind of thought-provoking stuff. And at the time, one thing he actually asked was, to be Jewish, is that a religion or is that a race? And I'm like, is that a religion or is that a race? To this day, I regret never having seen Dan since. I never got to see him after I graduated, so I'll never really get an opportunity to say this. But when I was at Trinity-Pawling, I actually got a definitive answer. By the way, if it sounds like I'm being disrespectful saying any of this, I deeply apologize. I swear. Like, this is just what was going on at the time, I swear. But, it was from one of my dearest friends at Trinity-Pawling, who actually did happen to be Jewish, who told me that, first and foremost, Judaism is a religion. It's because of the fact that it has several stereotypes involved with that religion. That's why people associate that with being a race sometimes. So if you ever wondered if being Jewish is a race or a religion, now you know the answer to that. Anyway, when Andrew Einstein's father came to speak to us that Saturday afternoon in April, we learned a lot more about Andrew. I mean, we learned about we had already known about his love of the sport lacrosse because he went to Trinity-Pawling for lacrosse. Again, this is when, lacrosse at Trinity-Pawling, I mentioned this the other day, lacrosse at Trinity-Pawling has always been huge, but this was just after Trinity-Pawling had just won New England, which would be the equivalent of, say, Horseheads winning states. So this is pretty big, pretty huge. And Andrew Einstein loved the sport of lacrosse. He also had much love for his home state of South Carolina. And I mentioned this the other day, ladies, he had an accent. But it was when his father had mentioned that when they had his actual service in his hometown in South Carolina, there were like 1,000, there was 1,000 people at that funeral. To say that listen, I can't remember everything his father said, but from what his father was, the fact there were 1,000 people at your funeral, you clearly touched the lives of a lot of people. The governor of South Carolina actually came to Andrew Einstein's funeral. That's insane. If I had sadly passed away, listen, I live in the state of New York. I don't want to get into how bad our governors have been in the last probably 10, 15 years. But, if the governor came to my funeral, I'd be dead, so I wouldn't know, but I would think that'd be pretty cool. After both Andrew and Sean passed away, knowing Andrew's love of his home state of South Carolina, and after doing a little bit of research, I added 2 things to my bucket list. Well, technically they're the same thing, but for one of each for Andrew and for Sean. And that is that one day, I plan on going to each of their respective hometowns in their respective states, Andrew in South Carolina, and Sean pretends that he was from Connecticut. I would go to their grave sites, and first I would get a bouquet of flowers, but not just any flowers. I would actually get the state flower for both Sean and Andrew's respective states. For Andrew, the state flower, and this is the research I mentioned a minute ago. For Andrew, the state flower of South Carolina is the yellow jessamine. It's actually a very pretty flower. I would suggest you look it up. For Sean, the state flower of Connecticut is the mountain laurel, which, fun fact, the mountain laurel is also the state flower of Pennsylvania. I mean, listen, those three states, and obviously New York, are the only states where I know the state flower in each respective states. For those wondering, New York's state flower is the red rose, which, seriously, that really does sound so New York. I don't know why I just worded it that way, but it is. So I would go to Andrew and Sean's respective grave sites. I would get a bouquet of the state flowers for each of their respective states. And obviously I would be there to pay respects. You'll have to bear with me. This part kind of gets emotional for me. I'd pay respects, and being rather proud of my Irish heritage, I would simply kneel at their gravesite and I would say, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be ever at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rain fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may the Lord hold you in the palm of his hand. That's what I plan to do one day. I never expect to get as worked up as I do whenever I talk about that, but here I am. I'll talk about this more in tomorrow's video, because I swear tomorrow's the last video I do this for the year. But sometimes I often wonder, like, I do these series of videos every year. And I obviously upload them to Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and any social media platform I have. Do I really need to keep doing it? It seems rather superfluous that, I am doing these videos. And to some degree, you are right. Sometimes I even question if it's even worth doing it anymore. But given the time of year, and given what I've been through, I mean, personally, I've also learned to be humble over these many years. So I really do try not to say I am entitled to anything, because I really try not to act that way. But given everything that's happened, I get to be able to do this. And knowing this time of year, with, for some people, seasonal depression being at an all-time high, if this could reach even one person, that'd be enough for me. So I'll keep doing it until sadly it's my time to go. Which hopefully won't be a very long time from now. But until then, I am beyond humbled that I was able to make this video for all of you to watch and listen and hopefully take away something from it. I hope that you do take this story, take my story, share it, and maybe you can, if I can help one person, even one person, that would be more than I ever dreamed of. And it doesn't even need to come from me. You can share that story. Or you know what? I mentioned this the other day. If you're suffering through if any kind of problem like this, please come to me. I've been there. I know. And it's hard. But when you know what's right and you find people who love you and know that you care, and when you know that they care, it makes it all the more worth it. So, again, if any of you need a shoulder to cry on, I swear I'll do all I can to listen and help you in any way. So, take care, make good choices, and have a lovely day. So am I.